Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool to shun, boycott, ignore, ruin, disrespect the FA Cup as the FA Cup falls in the mud again. So this is to do with Liverpool versus Shrewsbury replay, which will take place next week, which is a designated week that Jurgen Klopp had already said to his players that you will be off. That is part of this new 2-week break that all Premier League clubs are getting. Now the FA are saying, well, look, everybody agreed that if there was replays, they would be played there. They do fall into the break for the Premier League, but that's when they will be played. I tell you what, I think if you want to be anti-Liverpool, you're going to be anti-Liverpool. If you're going to be pro-Liverpool, you're going to be pro-Liverpool. For me, I'm anti-Liverpool. I'm a United fan, but I've got to say that it's a very, very difficult situation. On the one hand, I feel like Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola moaning about the FA Cup. This FA Cup's been going for a long, long time. It's part of English football. There's always been replays. And I know all this talk about player welfare and everything like that. Unfortunately, for Klopp and Pep and everybody else, I grew up watching football in the 80s and in the 90s, and the same 11 would play Wednesday to Saturday. There was no such thing as squads. You had two subs, and the same 11 would play week in, week out. Now, is the game quicker than it was 20, 30 years ago? Probably. But are the pitches better? Yes. So look, I think that the player welfare and overuse and everything like that argument, I'm sure there is an argument for it. I'm sure sports science will show us that. But I also think that they are paid very, very well, and I don't think that that's an excuse. Having said that, this is a 2-week break that I think we need to have because everyone in Europe has it, and I think it will help. I think it's going to help England in the Euros in the summer, and I think we do need to have one, and I like the way that they've done it, and I think Jurgen Klopp has said to his players, you can be off, and they will be off. He played a team of reserves in the third round of the FA Cup against Everton, and they beat Everton's first team, but he can do it again. It's not the end of the world. And also, we had it in the Carabao Cup where they had to go and play the World Club competition. So I think in many ways I can see both sides, but actually this is Liverpool's choice. To not, they're gonna put the team is still Liverpool that plays Shrewsbury next week. It just won't be the first team, and Jurgen Klopp himself won't be there. He's going to put someone else in charge. Now, maybe that is a little bit disrespectful. Maybe that is a little bit. Look, what I would say, I think if Jurgen Klopp's moody about this, his mood is misplaced. If he's just like, well, look, that's my week off, that's my first team players off, that's just the way it's going to be, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think anyone does. But if it's a moodiness about, oh, there shouldn't be replays, well, don't enter the FA Cup. Don't enter it, because that's the FA Cup. That's what it's always been. FA Cup 5th round fixtures are all being played midweek. The next round of the FA Cup after this, 5th round, is being played on a midweek, not on a weekend, to accommodate the Premier League break that we're getting. So the FA Cup has been accommodating. Now, I would agree, we don't need FA Cup replays anymore. And I think if that is the line in the sand that Klopp is basically trying to push, and maybe Pep was trying to push, then I agree with them. I don't think we should have FA Cup replays anymore. They are a bit archaic, and the football should be looking to move forward and make changes. And we had one against Wolves for United, and Liverpool, Shrewsbury having a replay. I think go to extra time in those circumstances. It takes away the advantage of Shrewsbury being at home. I think go to extra time, go to penalties. It just makes a lot more sense than going to Anfield, where Liverpool are now going to play their total reserves. There won't be any Salah coming on or anything like that, and there won't even be Jurgen Klopp on the touchline. So I think that is what the FA Cup needs to do, and I think all the moaning stops, and we can all stop being sensationalist one way or the other. Just stop the replays. The FA Cup has got an identity issue. I've said this before. I think this is a separate argument. It's interesting that Liverpool have got Chelsea if they beat Shrewsbury, and they've got Chelsea away in a midweek game. So Liverpool will probably end up winning this FA Cup. They'll probably end up doing a treble. And at the moment, I know Liverpool fans who've said to me that they're a little bit disappointed because they want to win the FA Cup because they want to win the treble. They've got the league on lockdown. They won the Champions League last year, so they could do it again. And the FA Cup at the moment, it's still there to be done. And by March, they'll have the league much more or less wrapped up, so they can play reserves if they want. So I think that the FA Cup is important to some Liverpool fans, even though it's not to Klopp. And maybe Klopp doesn't get. I don't know. I don't know why he doesn't want to do the treble. I don't know. I don't know why that is. But it's a very hard thing to do as well. And I think people underestimate that. I think the invincible thing is, look, I'm not going to diminish that, but winning a treble is very difficult, a proper one. So yeah, I mean, and I know Liverpool fans who want them to do that, but The FA Cup does have a problem. I mean, look, I hope that Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola are just don't want to be in the FA Cup altogether. I think that is a problem. But when you're not popular, you've got to work on it yourself. You can't just be a victim, you know. And I think the FA Cup is not popular at the moment. I watched Leicester at the weekend against Brentford playing their reserves. It's not just Liverpool and Man City. In many ways, I think it's more understandable when a Liverpool or a Man City don't put their first team out, because they are looking to win Champions Leagues and Premier League titles. I think it's a bloody disgrace when teams like Crystal Palace, who are nowhere near relegation and are around mid-table, are not trying to win an FA Cup. And I think Leicester as well. I know Leicester, look, they're trying to get Champions League football, I get that, but they're not in Europe. You could win a trophy, and I think that's where the FA Cup has got its biggest problem. The identity is not just the big teams disrespecting it. It's the clubs in the other clubs in the Premier League that have an opportunity to win some silver. And I also think that fans are disenchanted by that. I think as a fan of Crystal Palace or anything else, you can say, well, relegation, survival is more important. But actually, winning a trophy is something you and your kids will remember. So I think that's where the competition has a problem. And it has got a problem. And somebody said this to me today. What is now the difference between the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup? You know, the Carabao Cup, the League Cup, whatever you want to call it, was always, it never really... I remember growing up, I remember Luton winning it. I think Arsenal won it. Forest won it a couple of times. United won it in 92. I don't really remember a lot of the winners, to be honest with you, after that. I don't know. I think that went into the abyss more than the FA Cup did. And then it seems to have come back. The Carabao Cup seems to be a little bit more rejuvenated over the last few years, but the FA Cup just seems to drop and drop. You get into the Europa League off both. I think that's a problem. The FA Cup needs to offer something up, but it can't. If it gave a Champions League spot, I think that's too much, but it's a difficult one for the FA Cup. I think maybe we don't need 2 domestic trophies, but then again, a lot of the Spanish have 2 domestics, don't they? I don't know whether France and Italy do, but the Spanish do. So they have a problem, the FA Cup. They do, and I think it's because the Premier League is so lucrative to people, and the Champions League, that's where the priority is. I mean, 4th place in the Premier League is way more important than the Carabao and the FA Cup, and that's a fact. But yeah, I think in summary, look, I sympathise. I never thought I'd say this. I sympathise with what Klopp is saying. He's like, I don't even think he's being disrespectful. I think he's just saying, this is our week off. This is something the Premier League have made a big deal about. This is our week off that I've given my players a week off for, and you want me to keep them training that week to play in a replay when I've played the youth and the reserves in the 3rd round exclusively anyway. So I will be doing that again. And I tell you what, I'm having a break as well. I'm going to go and have a break. So I haven't got a massive problem with that. I think people will and people won't. But for me, common sense approach, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to make any difference. And then, maybe the FA Cup is not a priority for Liverpool. Let's just spell it out. The FA Cup to Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool is not a priority. And the Carabao Cup was not a priority either, because they had to play in the World Club competition. I think for Liverpool, their priorities this year are the Premier League, and the Premier League. And then it's the Champions League. And then it was the World Cup club competition, wasn't it? So, look, I can totally see it. I mean, the funny thing is, Manchester United are taking the FA Cup very seriously, because it is, and there is, I suppose there is a bit of hypocrisy there, but there isn't really, because I was thinking earlier, well, if Liverpool were in United's position and the FA Cup was so important to Klopp then, because this could be something that keeps me in a job, so he would pick his first team. But it's circumstances. It is circumstances. You're not going to get a Liverpool fan complaining about it when they are about to win their first league title in 30 years, and United fans would go mad if Ollie was putting out the reserves when this is our best chance to win a trophy. Different seasons, different reasons, isn't there? And I think that's what it's all about. And I think we all get a bit sensationalistic and angry about stuff, but I do get why Klopp has done it. I just think to say I'm not going to be there and I'm not going to play any players, but it's a very blunt message which people will read however they want. But I do think he's right. What do you think? Get your comments in below. Tomorrow night, watch along. 2nd leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final. It's at Villa Park. It's Leicester Villa. It's 1-1. So that's a good one. Join me for that tomorrow night for a watch along. Subscribe if you're new. Smash a like on the video, and I'll speak to you all soon.